Hey everyone, thanks for checking our latest TDR Cannabis in 5. Look, we got a good one here today, and I get it, everybody. Stocks right now are flirting with 52-week and all-time lows, and I know a lot of people are frustrated right now because they want to know what's next. Cannabis stocks right now are a pure Washington play, and until we get some sort of direction from Washington, we're going to continue to see these patterns. So today I'm going to ask the most important question. Are cannabis stocks poised to rebound in 2026? It's the whole reason why we have this platform and really why we do what we do to find out the reform side, the business side, and ultimately the investment side. So in this episode, I'm going to break down the comeback question from multiple angles. We'll look at technical signals, we'll look at market structure, and broader catalysts beyond the usual rescheduling headlines. So the whole idea in this isn't necessarily surface level commentary. It's a deeper look at what really matters, explained in a way that blends analyst insight with everyday language. So with that, let's get into our latest TDR Cannabis in 5. All right, let's look back in August where cannabis stocks, they ripped higher. Rumors swirled that Trump was preparing to announce a cannabis decision within weeks, and traders piled in. Oh, did they ever? Prices spiked, volume surged, and for a moment, it felt like the sector had life again. But as it usually does with this industry when there's no news, the rally didn't last. Without follow-through of those gains, they evaporated. Since then, the sector has drifted lower, testing critical support levels. And heading into year's end, many names are sitting at multi-year lows with liquidity thin and sentiment is very weak right now. So I want to get into those details on why it's weak and what we should be watching for. But first, just a quick word from our friends over at Morgan & Morgan. There's a reason smart investors celebrate when their portfolio jumps 40% in a year, just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Think about it. When you're investing, you want the right team in your corner. The same is true if you're injured in dealing with an insurance company. And that is where Morgan & Morgan comes into the equation. Why? Well, they've got more than 1,000 attorneys in over 100 offices nationwide, and they've been fighting for people for over 35 years, and their track record is hard to ignore. Case in point, in Florida, a client was offered $350,000 but walked away with $12 million. So in total, Morgan & Morgan, they've recovered more than $25 billion for over 500,000 clients. Because if you're injured due to someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. Not all law firms are created equal, but with Morgan & Morgan, their fee is free unless they win. You can start your claim right now by clicking the link in the description below or by scanning this QR code on your screen with your phone. At the end of the day, if you want what you deserve, make sure you go in with the right team by contacting Morgan & Morgan today. All right, let's now get back to the markets and what we want to talk about here today. So really, first off, even if you're not a chart junkie, a few technical markers are worth paying attention to right now. The first up is volume trends. In August, trading volume, it exploded, but it was short-lived. Since then, as we look at it, volume has collapsed, and that's putting it bluntly. Right now, as some of you may know, think of volume as the energy behind the move. So without steady buying pressure, rallies then obviously fizzle. So for a comeback to stick, we need to see consistent, higher than average volume over weeks, not just one-day spikes. We also have to look at the RSI, the Relative Strength Index. Many cannabis stocks right now are oversold, with RSI readings near or below 30. So oversold doesn't guarantee a rebound, but it often signals selling pressure is maxed out. Historically, markets tend to bounce from these levels, but the bounce is stronger when it lines up with rising volume and solid support. Again, we go back to volume. Next up is support and base building. True bottoms, they don't happen in a single day, they form over time. Look for stocks holding a tight range, making higher lows, and breaking out above resistance with conviction. So if breakouts fade quickly, that base, it isn't ready yet. All right, let's now move to market structure, grip, and isolation risk. And here's where things definitely get interesting. As we look at the industry, a handful of big-scaled operators, they now have a real grip on the sector. Why do they have that? Well, their retail footprint, their international expansion, and their balance sheet, that strength gives them influence that smaller players right now, they can't match. So this concentration of power, it can lead eventually, and it's going to isolation trading, where capital flows into a few leaders and their performance starts to decouple from the rest of the sector. The sector does move as a whole right now, but those days are going to come to an end, especially if you look at the last 4 to 5 earnings reports with the major MSOs. So with that, we need to look at concentration effects. Liquidity is shrinking, so investors are clustering around companies with scale, with cash flow, and with global optionality. We also have to look at price discovery. In thin markets, the leaders of stock prices increasingly set the tone for the whole sector. And then there's segmentation risk. Mid-size operators aren't doomed, but they need to prove their value through disciplined operations, clear regional moats, and strong unit economics. So when we factor all this in, let's now look at institutions, and let's go beyond the basics, because it's easy to say institutions will buy once rescheduling happens, but the reality is it's much more complex. First up is mandates and custody. Many funds are restricted from holding U.S. cannabis stocks. So even if the rules change, risk committees and custodians, they need time to update mandates and systems. So that leg, it can take quarters, not weeks. We also have to look at liquidity and execution. Institutions need depth, tight bid-ask spreads, and reliable borrow for hedging and market makers willing to carry inventory. Without that, they won't commit serious capital. We also have to look at index inclusion. If cannabis stocks become eligible for major indices, passive funds will provide a steady bid. But until then, institutions that do engage will likely focus on the biggest, most liquid names. And then you've got disclosure and credibility. Institutions want clean financials, conservative guidance, and disciplined capital allocation. Companies that show return on invested capital discipline and transparent reporting will screen in first. So now let's look at rescheduling, but let's go beyond that, because we know it's the obvious catalyst, but it's not the only thing. Other factors will drive this comeback. One is international expansion. We've seen many Canadian LPs expand their footprint into the European market. You need new markets. And as reform stalls in the US, you're starting to see that now. Yes, Curaleaf has been in Europe for a number of years, and now you're starting to see companies like Cresco Labs. So if Washington and state level governments can't get their priorities straight, then look for more companies to start looking at international opportunity, which is the case right now. Again, if these companies are going to grow, they need new markets to go live. Next, you've heard it from some of our guests recently, like Anthony Cogniglio or Frank Colombo, and that's balance sheet repair. Refinancing debt and reducing cash burn can change equity math quickly. We also have to look at operational excellence. Tight inventory cycles and high margin product mixes, they show resilience. And then there's the broader market sentiment. If risk appetite returns to equities, cannabis indeed can ride the wave, and it's demonstrated that time and time again, provided the liquidity is there. So right now we look at the opportunity. I'm going to be honest, the sentiment right now is bleak. Retail investors have exited, institutions are cautious, and headlines focus on delays. But historically, bottoms often form when sentiment is at its worst. Capitulation, when investors throw in the towel, they can mark turning points. For contrarians, this environment, it could present some opportunities. But the key in all this, and I know people hate to hear this, patience and risk tolerance are key. And a lot of people in this space are running out of patience. So really, to wrap this up, what would confirm a comeback for this industry right now? Well, multiple weeks of higher volume up days. Next is stocks holding support and breaking out with conviction. Also important to highlight are tighter spreads and deeper order books. In addition to that, credible corporate guidance and balance sheet discipline and concrete steps towards custody, index eligibility, and mandate updates. Man, do we need that right now. So to sum all this up, and it goes without saying, right now, cannabis stocks are fragile right now. Volume has dried up, and there's a lot of impatience going on. In some cases, people are walking away from the industry, period. So again, yes, we need that news, but if we go beyond rescheduling, it's about volume returning, bases forming, companies proving operational strength, and market plumbing improving. That all needs to happen. So we look at this, leaders with scale, they may pull capital into a tighter core, while mid-sized operators that show discipline, they can still carve out something in this space. Because really, the next chapter for the sector are the ones who can adapt, who prove resilience, and who earn investors' trust in all this. So hopefully we get something here. But ultimately, as we scale here towards the end of 2025, I'll be straight with you, this industry still moves on headlines. We just need something like that, as you all know, but we won't get into that today. Let's look beyond that. And really, some of these things that I outline here today, hopefully it helps you. Let me know if this breakdown, what you thought of it, so leave your comments below. Any questions that you may have, anything that grabs your attention, I'd love to get your feedback. As usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications, and stay connected with us here at TDR Cannabis in 5. That's it for today, everyone. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in your next video.